Hi, welcome to Week in Review, where we look at some of the news and the headlines. Joined this week by David Dishman from our business desk, Don Mecoy, the business editor, and on the phone we've got Erik Horne, our Thunder sports cover extraordinaire. Hey Erik, let's start with you. Big news from Thunderland today. Kind of an icon, calling it a day. What's the latest?
Yeah. You know, Nick Collison, after 15 seasons with the Thunder/Sonics, retired on Friday, announced his retirement officially. It'd been something that people had kind of been anticipating around the team, and you know, throughout the Thunder, and you know, it was a guy who got a lot of respect from former teammates yesterday, and it was great to see him go out the way he did with the respect and honor he did from the NBA community.
Let's talk about a couple things. Why is he so beloved? First by fans, and secondly by his teammates. What is it about Nick Collison that makes him such a cog on this team?
Well, he's a guy who plays the game with a style that's very unselfish. I think that is something that people naturally gravitated to. You know, Barry Trammell wrote about this yesterday. He's a guy that people have grown familiar with as well. You know, even before he arrived with the Thunder 10 years ago, you know, he'd been playing in the Big 12 for 4 years with Kansas. You know, people in this region have grown familiar with Nick Collison's game. He's played at a high level for, you know, about 20 years of his life in Big 12 country. So it's a guy who's familiar to the fans, and frankly, like he's just a professional. You saw it from Kendrick Perkins yesterday. Guys like Jeff Green, Kevin Durant, guys that go on to other teams. They always talk about how Nick Collison helped them while they were here together for the Thunder. And he's just always represented what the Thunders basically wanted to show people throughout the league, that, you know, they're a professional organization with a guy at the top in Nick Collison that is the epitome of that professionalism they want to show.
Yeah, and it's kind of a Hoosiers type story, his background, right? I mean, he's a small town kid from, you know, rural Iowa, grew up playing. I think we had a story this morning that talked about that, you know, playing in cold winter gyms in Iowa, and, you know, made it to the greatest league on the planet.
Yeah, it's a good point, Phil. It's like, you know, I think that's something else that kind of resonates with people that have followed this team is, you know, he comes from humble beginnings. You know, he played for his father in high school in Iowa. His family still lives in Iowa. They drive to all of his games, or not all of his games, but a lot of his games. And, you know, he's a guy who really keeps a low profile. And people, I think, that follow the Thunder, Oklahomans, really respect that. He's never been a guy who's been in trouble. He's a humble guy. He speaks his mind, and he doesn't put himself before the team. And I think that a lot of Oklahomans can resonate with that.
I thought it was interesting. I saw a tweet, I think, yesterday saying start building a statue for this guy outside of the Peak. I'm not sure that's going to be the first guy they build a statue for there, but it's interesting how well loved he is in the community here.
If not the first statue, I think the first jersey. We've had this debate throughout the Oklahoman sports room. And I feel like he's definitely going to be the first guy to get his jersey retired whenever that happens. It would probably be up to him, you know, or it might be beginning of the season coming up, or whenever he thinks the time is right. But this is a guy who's going to have a place in this organization forever. You know, maybe he's a coach down the line. Maybe he's a guy who gets into broadcasting. But it's going to be interesting to see what Nick Collison does next. But I think he's going to be a guy who definitely gets his jersey in the rafters.
Great. I'll turn to our Thunder expert, Don. Any memories stand out from the Nick Collison years here in Oklahoma City for you?
You know, one of the great things, when Nick was still playing a lot, and he did most of his years here, was he had a real connection when James Harden was here. And when the B team would roll onto the floor, and you'd have Collison and Harden out there playing against the other team's backups, and they would just carve them up sometimes. And Collison was a great passer in addition to being a great screen setter, a good rebounder, a good defender. But him and Harden's connection was really special.
I don't know if you know this, but I went to Kansas State, and as a KU player, we had to deal with Collison quite often. He reminded me a lot of like a Jeff Hornacek kind of player when he played, in that the guy never makes mistakes. I mean, he always makes the right pass. He doesn't turn the ball over. He's just always in the right spot. He's just a great fundamental player.
He's really solid.
Yeah. Any thoughts?
No.
The Missouri guy's going to stay quiet on this. Okay, no problem. Hey, Erik, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it, all right?
Thanks for having me, yo.
All right. All right, Dave, let's turn to something you maybe do want to talk about. Let's talk about a state of the state story that we had recently that looked at employment in Oklahoma. What'd you find?
Well, looking to some of the statistics and talking to some experts and industry experts and employment experts and those who really track it a lot more than I do, found out that, hey, we're not doing too bad. We rank slightly above the national average for unemployment rate. We've also done pretty well on some other statistics and measures. One thing that we're seeing that talking to these folks that they were really stressing was the need for some additional better jobs, better laborers, higher educated laborers, those sorts of things. So there's the give and take there with how much can we produce from an education standpoint and how much can we hire. So it was a little bit of all of that, looking into that. But overall, Oklahoma's doing pretty well as far as employment goes.
And the State of the State project, again, is a year-long effort by the Oklahoman to sort of look at some of the big problems that confront our state, some of the rankings where we do not very well when we compare with our other peers across the nation. And this issue of unemployment that we've talked about, and Don, we've talked about this as well, is that one of the big issues that's out there for the state is we've built or are trying to build sort of a higher tech economy, a economy that's built on that requires a lot of smart people to operate it, and that's one of the big fears that they see on the horizon is that we are not producing enough of the kind of workforce to fill the kind of jobs that they think are necessary to sort of help us improve our rankings as a state.
Yeah, David had some of that in his story too, but one of the things that he learned and that we've seen before is this is kind of a national trend. There's a skills gap across the country. I mean, we still educate people and train people the way we did 100 years ago in a lot of instances, but there is more of a need now for tradesmen, people who don't necessarily have college degrees, but who have certain job skills that they can get in trade school or through apprenticeships. Those kinds of, there's a lot of those jobs out there that are begging to be filled, and employers are trying to get those filled, and those are good jobs. A lot of them are, and we're also seeing these extremely high skilled jobs, very technical kind of jobs. You know, software writers, those kinds of people. That there's a need for those as well. And one of the things that reflects in Oklahoma, and it's been this way for a long time, is our average income, our median wage in Oklahoma is below the national average and has been for a long time. I think it was like 86% of the national average. So that's something we've seen here, and that's a place where we could catch up. If we did a better job of having a skilled labor force and had employers, and employers are working with educators to try and make this happen, it also wouldn't hurt if we've seen very slow wage growth. And usually when the labor pool shrinks, you know, we have low unemployment all across the nation right now, and we haven't seen wages grow like they probably should and like they have in the past when you have a tight labor force like we do right now.
Well, and speaking of a tight labor force and economic development, we sent Jack Money up to Seattle to take a look at what could be or will be a huge boon here locally, the KC-46 tanker that will be serviced at Tinker. Flight crews will be training at Altus. What did Jack go and what did he see? And
well, the first thing I should say is, we didn't send him up there. Boeing paid for Jack to go to their plant in Seattle where they're building these things. The KC-46 program has had a troubled past. They've missed a lot of deadlines, and Boeing has written off hundreds of millions of dollars just to get this thing done. They still haven't delivered a one. They've missed several deadlines. Their next deadline is in October. They say they're going to deliver planes this year, and they showed Jack planes, test planes that are flight ready. They took him out on the tarmac, showed him other planes that are very nearly ready, maybe have everything but the engines on them. You know, they're saying we've got planes that will be ready to deliver, and that's part of what Jack's going to write about. He's also going to remind people of all the problems that they've had with this aircraft. But
my favorite was when they put the wrong gas in it, and that set the testing back months.
Yeah, they've had just about every kind of problem you can imagine. I mean, one of the things that he writes about that is interesting to me, in the planes that they're using now, this is for fueling other airplanes in the air. So a boom comes out the back, they attach to another aircraft, and they fill it up with fuel. Well, and then what they're using now, there's the operator of that boom and who delivers the fuel. He sits in the back of the plane and he's eyeballing what's going on there. Well, in the new KC-46, he actually sits up in the cockpit and he's looking on computer screens, and he can toggle different screens and get all kinds of views. Well, one of the issues they've had is if the sun is glaring off the plane that they're trying to fuel, you get flares on your screen. He has trouble seeing it, and they've made adjustments to that, but it's, you go more high tech and you run into new sets of problems. So they've had lots of different difficulties. It sounds like, and they promise that they have got the things ironed out, that there's going to be delivery, which is great news for us because, as you say, there's going to be jobs at Altus where people go to train, where they're going to be flying in and out of there. And the world's biggest garage is over at Tinker, and that's where they're going to be servicing these planes, where they service a lot of planes.
Which we've invested tens of millions in taxpayer dollars to prepare.
Yeah, and it's still, I believe it's still under construction. But yeah, so it's a huge project, and as is Jack's 3 stories that he will have about this weekend. So, but it should be of interest to more people than just people in the military and civilian employees at Tinker and so forth, because it's a huge military project, and it also, we have a lot of Boeing employees here. They don't build the planes here, but they do a lot of design work and things like that, and of course they're interested in their company being successful. And Boeing does have a long history of success at creating Defense Department projects, so we'll keep our fingers crossed that that's going to be the case with the KC-46.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Well, listen, that's the kind of news we give you every day on our website at newsok.com. We throw the thing into your driveway if you'd like it there. Pick us up, check us out. We'll see you next week.